But what we're seeing actually more of in India are startups, and these are pure play impact investments from some really talented people that are willing to move into this space and sort of build these innovative models. And so we're starting to see, both of these kinds of organizations in India. And so these organizations typically have come through our program, and we actually last year interviewed or surveyed about 120 social enterprises. And this was sort of both nonprofit and for-profit, but largely for-profit. Some of them were the nonprofits that had a spin-off. And what I thought would be interesting, and I potentially should have put it up in a slide, but I thought every time you put a slide up, people disengage. So I'm gonna list these out for those of you who have some notebooks. Really, we came up with 4 common challenges that social enterprise, at least in India, are facing, right? And the first one is access to blended capital. And blended capital, for those of you who probably do know, but who don't know, it's basically the whole spectrum of funding, all the way from sort of philanthropy to pure play equity. In a way, and don't forget about the debt in between. So accessing blended capital is not just a question of access, but it's also the regulatory environment allowing an organization to kind of play on either sides of the capital spectrum. The other interesting thing is what we're calling a lack of big data. This is a McKinsey term that's come up. There just isn't enough data for many social enterprises and impact investments to be able to make some of their business decisions. So similar to the corporate sector, there's a lot more data out there. There's a real lack of that. And so some feedbacks come saying it's the government's role really to be able to play there is bring us more data that we can start really building these models and going deeper. The third one is, when we've mentioned it before, a shortage of skilled HR. And really being able to bring talent into the sector. It becomes a question of affordability, but there's actually a larger question, which I think it's important to throw out there, is that, talented people, we have someone snoring very loudly. A lot of talented people actually don't want to go into the deep rural areas of India or other countries. And, Husk Power is here, and Husk Power is heralded as like the end-all and be-all of impact investments. And quite frankly, struggled with finding talent that wants to hang out in the middle of Bihar. And so really what we need to do is make this an attractive proposition for talent to want to go out there. And no matter how much you pay, they won't go out there. So whether it's an increased level of responsibility, give them P&L, give them support, infrastructure, whatever we need to do as an enterprise, I think we need to rethink about how we sort of attract that talent. And then the fourth thing is high upfront costs for behavior change. So when you have a product that typically, or a service that's being provided by these impact investments, if we want to call it, there's such a high cost in sort of changing the behavior before they're even able to purchase that the cost of providing that just kills the margins on the business. And so that's really where we've seen that hybrid piece happening. And so where philanthropy can play a role, and even government schemes to some point, is investing in the behavior change sort of and the awareness piece. Do I have more time, Asif? No? Can I continue? Oh, another minute, okay, cut me off. And I think the last thing which we found was interesting is often we're sort of asking social enterprises, what do you guys see as the challenges to scaling? And interestingly enough, in this survey, we asked them, think about when you look at your peers, where do you see, what would be the critical factors that you see in your peers that allow them to scale? Make sense? Does that make sense? Yes? Okay. So I thought it would be cool to list some of these things because that gives you a perspective of how social enterprise actually see themselves competing and playing sort of in this space. And so this is an Indian perspective again. The number one enhancing sort of factor is a strong team. So I think we're all aligned on that. They see a strong team within a social enterprise and they're like, that is the number one factor. Interestingly enough, the number two factor, which sometimes we don't think about that social enterprise see as a real advantage, is a first mover advantage. So when they see a social enterprise moving into an untapped sector and being the first mover there, they see that as very high potential to sort of build that space and being able to sort of gain profitability fairly quickly before sort of followers come in there. And then interestingly enough, which we haven't heard much about here at the forum, is technology. And enterprises who find other enterprises that have strong technology incorporated into their business models see that as a real advantage. And a lot of that has to do with building efficiency into your business model, right? Because you got to push your costs down. I mean, it's really a quantity game for many of them. They got to sell cheap products that are whatever high quality, but to be able to be profitable, they really have to push the costs down. And building technology into that is a real, they see that to be a real advantage. So using some of the funds for enabling technology platforms across sector is really something that we need to think about. Am I out of time? I'm out of time. I'll go really quickly. Okay, so the fourth one is ability to get funding, which we said. Competitive pricing, which I did kind of mention before, which is sort of efficiency. But the sixth and the seventh was interesting. Calculated risk-taking. So they look at their peers and they evaluate how their peers are calculating risk within their sector. And then the last one was credibility with the customer. So how do you build credibility for someone to want to purchase your product or your service was another thing that was looked at. And the last piece I want to end on is there's a real importance to nonprofits in this whole impact investing space, which we can't actually forget about. And that's the relationship with the community. So in our class, when we have for-profits and nonprofits, the reason the for-profits even want to come and try to learn something is because the relationship for-profits build within the community, and Brac can probably speak to this as well, is the end-all and be-all. It's entry into the community, it's trust, it's respect, and you don't have to pay for that behavior change awareness cost. So credibility with the customer often comes with partnering with a nonprofit. So that's my take.
That's fascinating, and you got some bonus point because you got snowed at. So, yeah, please, if you could continue.
She is very fast, so I cannot speak so fast. So before my talk, we want to see a video clip about more 2 minutes. Please, video clip.
Happiness. How can we create and spread happiness? Spreading happiness. That is the vision of SK. It may be convenient for the child if you row for him, but if you teach the child how to row, he will be able to do it on his own. Instead of monetary aid, we share the way of happiness. This is the reason SK makes social enterprises. Beyond ordinary donations, SK shares its resources and capabilities to solve social problems and, at the same time, create a new value of happiness. SK is committed to creating sustainable happiness. A social enterprise that invests to build competencies to allow people to create happiness on their own. SK believes that investing in social enterprises is the road to investing in happiness. To ensure more sustainable and more effective investment toward happiness, we had to invest in new thinking. Together with SK, collaborate in the formation of a sound ecosystem for social enterprises. Through social enterprises, sustainable happiness can be spread worldwide. This is the best investment that will ensure a better and happier tomorrow for everyone. By sharing the way of happiness, happiness can be spread around the world. This is the reason we must collaborate with social enterprises. Together with social enterprises,
Thank you for video clip. My name is Hyun from Korea. I'm Director of Social Enterprise Operation and Support Team at the Happiness Foundation, built by SK Corporation, in charge of supporting social enterprise and creating the right ecosystem you see in the video clip. Before my talk, let me ask one question. Let's have a show of hands. How many of you are currently managers or executives at a corporation like me? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, thank you. My talk will probably be more relevant to these people, as it is about for-profit companies have to be involved in the social enterprise model. SK was established a textile business at the end of the Korean War in 1953. SK grew up very quickly, expanding its scope of business from energy to ICT industry. This year, we opened a new chapter in our corporate history by acquiring Hynix, the world's #2 semiconductor manufacturer. In Korea, SK is certainly leading the trend of corporate social responsibility. It is the corporate credo, maximize happiness of all stakeholders, that has driven SK to take on such a leading role. We have carried out a range of social campaigns by investing about $200 billion every year, which was spent to support and sponsor meaningful causes led by NGOs. However, in the past, we didn't closely look at profitability or sustainability of our response. If they had a noble cause to serve, we just gave financial support. And later, we became skeptical about this approach since our response repeatedly come back to us asking for more help. This made us realize we need to ensure their sustainability with a long-term vision. In this regard, a social enterprise has nearly emerged as the optimal solution to realize our belief and maximize happiness of members of society in terms of worthy investment going beyond a simple act of charity. What we need is an investment for the future, not just one of charity. Supporting a social enterprise is a big investment in the social framework to enhance creativity and efficiency and sustainability. But why the corporation changed the mind for the CSR to the investment? That's the story about that. The infamous Asian financial crisis in 1997 was followed by yet another financial meltdown in 2008, which resulted in jobless growth and the ever-increasing gap between the rich and the poor. As economic uncertainty increases, there is a growing call for business, especially big business like SK, to assume a leading role to tackle the country's economic challenges. SK as a market leader has the duty to find a new approach to social contribution different from the conventional way. And after some searching and study, we come to realize building a social enterprise can be an effective investment in the social framework, which creates both economic and social value. Corporate contribution will be perceived as investment in the social framework for sustainability, no longer viewed as mere responsibility or obligation. In turn, this should encourage more business to engage in social initiatives. That's why we are here. So because of the collaboration between private sector and business and government can be the key factor for success of the impact investing and the make a value, economic and social value, same time. That's why I'm here. That's why you are here now. Thank you.